In the very house where he raised his son, an elderly father is treated as a burden by his daughter-in-law. She scolds him in front of strangers, gives him orders like a servant, and humiliates him every day, calling him a useless burden. He endures in silence, forced to bear contempt and cruelty within his own home. How much abuse can a man's dignity endure? Tell me where you're watching from. Leave a like if this story reaches you, and subscribe. In the penthouse apartment in Santa Fe, Mexico City, the kitchen gleams with stainless steel and marble countertops. The exhaust fan hums constantly, a steady drone that fills the silence. A faucet drips somewhere near the sink, marking time with rhythmic persistence. The sharp slam of a cabinet door reverberates through the space like an accusation. The smell of bleach mingles with reheated coffee, creating a harsh combination that stings the nostrils. On the counter sits a bucket of lukewarm water, a rough cloth draped over its edge, next to a stack of plates still slick with grease. Don Esteban, 78 years old, stands hunched over the sink. His worn sweater hangs loose on his thinning frame, and his feet shuffle in old sandals that have seen better days. His hands, cracked and weathered from decades of labor, scrub at a stubborn stain on a pan. The cold rises from the tile floor, creeping up through his knees and settling into his bones. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretches out in shades of gray, traffic crawling below, the afternoon sky heavy with clouds. Inside, the digital clock on the microwave blinks repeatedly, as if watching, judging, keeping score. The sound of heels clicking on marble announces her arrival before she appears. Camilla, his daughter-in-law, sweeps into the kitchen with the confidence of someone who has never questioned her place in the world. Her designer heels tap sharply with each step. She wears a silk dress that flows as she moves, her hair perfectly styled, each strand in place. Her nails are immaculate, painted a deep crimson. A gold bracelet jingles at her wrist with every gesture she makes. She lifts her phone to her ear, speaking rapidly in a voice that carries authority, never once glancing in his direction. To her, he might as well be another appliance, something functional but unworthy of notice. "Leave that clean, Esteban. It smells old in here," she says, without looking up from her screen, her nose wrinkling in distaste. She crosses to the refrigerator, yanks it open, and retrieves a plate. Without ceremony, she drops it onto the table with a careless clatter. "Clean this too, and hurry up." Her tone slides over him like oil over water, slippery with indifference. She stands tall, spine straight, shoulders back, a sharp contrast to the defeated curve of the old man's back. The microwave beeps insistently. Camilla ignores it completely. Somewhere in the building, the elevator dings, reminding him of other floors, other families, another life entirely. Don Esteban swallows hard. Steam from the dishwasher drifts up, fogging his glasses. He pushes them up with the back of his damp hand, leaving a smudge across one lens. He finishes wiping the pan and sets it carefully in the drying rack, his movements deliberate, practiced. He reaches for the cloth again, wringing it out over the bucket. The water runs brown and soapy between his fingers. He wants to say something. The words form in his mind, gather at the back of his throat, press against his teeth. But they never make it past his lips. Instead, he simply nods, picks up the plate she left on the table, and carries it to the sink. The silence between them stretches and swells, filling every corner of the kitchen. It's a silence weighted with everything that cannot be said, with every small humiliation that has accumulated over weeks and months. In that silence, something else lives too, a quiet, stubborn flame of dignity that refuses to be extinguished completely. He rinses the plate under cold water, feeling the ache in his fingers intensify. Behind him, Camilla makes a sound of impatience and walks out, her heels fading down the hallway. The apartment returns to its usual sounds, the fan, the drip, the distant hum of traffic far below. Don Esteban sets the plate in the drying rack beside the pan. He dries his hands on his pants because the towel hanging by the sink is still damp from earlier. For a moment, he simply stands there, one hand resting on the edge of the counter for support. The afternoon light slants through the windows, illuminating dust motes that drift lazily in the air. He can see his reflection in the polished surface of the refrigerator door, distorted, faded, barely there. He looks away. From his sweater pocket, he pulls out a worn rosary, the beads smooth from years of prayer. They were his wife's, Rosa. She held them every Sunday at Mass, her lips moving silently as she counted each bead. He runs his thumb over them now, finding comfort in their familiar shape, their weight in his palm. The rosary smells faintly of incense and patience, of afternoons spent in quiet contemplation. He thinks of Rosa, wonders what she would say if she could see him now, living like this in his own son's home. The faucet continues to drip. Each drop falls with perfect regularity, a metronome counting down the hours, the days. He should fix it, but he no longer knows what repairs he's allowed to make, what tasks might earn him another sharp word or dismissive gesture. So he leaves it, lets it drip, and returns to wiping down the counter one more time, making sure every surface gleams the way Camilla demands. Outside, the city moves on, indifferent to the small tragedy unfolding in this expensive apartment. Inside, an old man with cracked hands and a bent spine continues his work, invisible in his own son's house, diminished but not quite broken. Not yet. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the exhaustion and the hurt, something still burns, faint but persistent, waiting for the moment when someone, anyone, will finally see him again. He wasn't always this small, this invisible. There was a time when Don Esteban stood tall, when his hands built things instead of just cleaning them. He was born in Atlixco, Puebla, where bougainvillea climbed every wall and the sun rose early over the mountains. As a young man, he worked construction, mixing cement and laying bricks under the hot Mexican sun. His shoulders were broad then, his back straight and strong. He could carry 2 buckets of mortar up a ladder without breaking stride. Later, when construction work slowed, he sold tamales from a wooden cart in Colonia Narvarte. He woke before dawn every morning when the city was still quiet and dark. By the time the first workers appeared on the streets, his cart was already stationed at the corner, steam rising from the pot of corn husks. The smell of masa and salsa verdes filled the morning air. People knew him by name. They'd call out their orders from across the street, trusting him to remember who liked chicken and who preferred pork, who wanted extra salsa and who preferred it mild. He walked those wet streets after rain, his cart leaving tracks in the puddles, the wheels squeaking with a sound that became as familiar as birdsong to the neighborhood. Customers would stop him, chat about their families, their jobs, their troubles. He listened to them all, offering a kind word or a joke when someone looked particularly tired. His tamales were good, but people came back for more than just the food. They came because Don Esteban made them feel seen, heard, remembered. Then came the earthquake of 1985. The ground shook and the world changed overnight. Buildings crumbled, people died, entire neighborhoods disappeared under rubble. Don Esteban spent days in the debris, pulling survivors from collapsed structures, sharing what little food he had, sleeping on the street beside strangers who had lost everything. When the dust finally settled, he returned to his cart, to his corner, to his routine. Because that's what people needed, something familiar, something that hadn't been destroyed. Rosa, his wife, got sick not long after. Cancer, the doctors said, though they used other words that Don Esteban didn't fully understand. He only knew that she grew thinner each week, that her smile became more fragile, that one day she simply didn't wake up. He held her hand in the hospital, felt it go cold in his, and something inside him went quiet too. But he had Mauricio to think about, his son who was still in school, who needed books and uniforms and a future. So, Don Esteban worked. He took double shifts on construction sites, his body protesting but pushing through. He built walls on Liverpool Avenue that still stand today, holding up apartments where families sleep and eat and live. He learned to bargain at the Jamaica market, haggling with vendors until he got fair prices for vegetables and rice, never losing his smile even when they tried to charge him more. His pride was never in the money he made, but in coming home at the end of the day, knowing he had provided for his son, that Mauricio could go to school with his stomach full and his shoes without holes. He kept Rosa's rosary in his jacket pocket, the beads worn smooth from her prayers. Sometimes, late at night, when Mauricio was asleep, he'd take it out and hold it, feeling the decades slip through his fingers the way she used to. The rosary still smelled like Sunday Mass and patience, like incense and whispered petitions. He also carried a photograph in that same pocket, folded and creased from being handled so often. It showed Mauricio in his school uniform, maybe 10 years old, with crooked teeth and eyes full of promise. That photo smelled like the future, like hope that was just beginning to take shape. When the house feels too foreign, too cold, when Camila's voice echoes off the marble and makes him feel like an intruder, Don Esteban reaches for those beads and traces them like a map back to himself, back to the man he used to be. They remind him that he had value once, that he built things and fed people and loved deeply. He isn't completely alone here, though it often feels that way. Doña Remedios from the floor below sometimes leaves pan dulce outside his door, sweet bread wrapped in paper, left without a note because she knows and doesn't want to make a fuss. Julio, the building's doorman, winks at him when he sees him looking particularly tired, a small gesture of solidarity between working men. And Sophia, the granddaughter of the woman who cleans the building, sometimes asks him to tell her stories about the old neighborhood, about what Mexico City was like before all these towers of glass and steel. Mauricio, his son, built those towers. He became a successful businessman, constructing buildings along Paseo de la Reforma, negotiating contracts worth millions, wearing expensive suits and driving cars that cost more than Don Esteban earned in a lifetime. Mauricio always said the success was to protect the family, to make sure they never had to struggle the way they did when he was young. Don Esteban holds on to that memory, clings to it like a lifeline. Even with Camila's voice weighing on his shoulders, even with the cold floor under his feet and the ache in his knees, he believes, because this is what he learned from Rosa, from those years of double shifts and early mornings, that life can change in a heartbeat when the truth finally comes to light. He learned that faith isn't about knowing what will happen. It's about trusting that eventually, somehow, things will balance out. Justice might be slow, but it comes. The truth might hide for a while, but it surfaces. He survived earthquakes and sickness and years of poverty. He can survive this too. He has to. Because somewhere under this expensive roof, beneath these marble floors and behind these windows that overlook a city he helped build, there's still a father waiting for his son to open his eyes and really see him again. The humiliation escalates without warning on a Tuesday afternoon when the sky hangs low and gray over the city. Camila appears in the living room where Don Esteban sits by the window, his rosary in hand. She tosses a broom at his feet, the handle clattering against the floor. "The patio needs to be cleaned until it shines," she announces, arms crossed. "I want to see my reflection in those tiles." She hands him a bottle of industrial cleaner that makes his eyes water just from the fumes. The bristles on the broom are worn down to nubs, barely functional. The afternoon air carries a chill that cuts through his thin sweater. He fills a bucket with water from the outdoor tap, and the cold bites into his fingers immediately. He kneels on the concrete, the hard surface pressing into his knees, and begins to scrub. The cleaner burns. He can feel it eating at his skin, the harsh chemicals finding every crack and cut on his weathered hands. He scrubs harder because Camila stands at the window watching, her silhouette dark against the glass. His knuckles drag across the rough surface of the tiles. Once, twice, a dozen times. The skin splits along the ridges of his knuckles, thin lines of red appearing like fault lines across a map. He doesn't stop. He can't. The cold water turns pink as he rinses the tiles, his blood mixing with the soap. His hands throb with each movement, but he keeps working until the patio does shine, until he can see fragments of sky reflected in the wet surface. When he finally stands, his knees barely support him. He has to grip the wall to keep from falling. Inside, through the window, he watches Camila glance at the patio, nod once with satisfaction, and walk away without a word. That night, dinner is a thin soup with a sour smell that makes his stomach turn before he even tastes it. The bread she leaves on his plate is hard as stone, impossible to bite through without pain. He tries to eat anyway, driven by hunger that gnaws at his insides, but the soup burns his throat going down and sits wrong in his belly. "If you don't like it, don't eat," Camila says from across the kitchen, not looking up from her phone. She slams a drawer shut for emphasis, the sound sharp as a slap. Over the following days, things disappear. The thick blanket he used on his bed vanishes, replaced by a thin sheet that might as well be paper for all the warmth it provides. At night, he shivers under it, pulling his knees to his chest, trying to conserve what little heat his body generates. His belt hangs loose around his waist now, the buckle sliding to the side because there aren't enough notches to hold it properly. He's losing weight, his face growing gaunt, his eyes sinking deeper into their sockets. He moves through the apartment like a shadow, learning to make himself small, quiet, invisible. He holds in coughs that want to escape his chest. He swallows hunger that growls in his stomach. He walks on the edges of rooms, keeping close to walls, avoiding the center where he might be seen, where he might be noticed and found wanting. Every sound he makes feels too loud. Every breath feels like an intrusion. In the early hours before dawn, when the city still sleeps and the apartment settles into its deepest silence, he hears voices. They drift down the hallway from Camilla's study, fragments of conversation that slip under the door. He recognizes her voice immediately, that sharp tone she uses when she's making demands. If he doesn't sign, the rest is lost in static. Then clearer, the house in my name. Another pause. A decent nursing home. His heart pounds in his chest. She's talking to someone on the phone, making plans, discussing him like he's a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. Yolanda, the cleaning woman who comes twice a week, no longer meets his eyes. She arrives, does her work quickly, and leaves. Once, when Don Esteban reaches up to put a glass back in the cabinet, he notices a plate by the trash can. The food on it looks fresh, untouched, perfectly good. Someone threw it away on purpose. Someone wanted him to see it. His heart constricts in his chest, a physical pain that has nothing to do with hunger and everything to do with the message being sent. That night, sitting in his usual spot by the window, he holds Rosa's rosary and prays. His lips move silently, forming words he's said thousands of times. He prays for strength because his body is failing. He prays for humility because pride won't help him now. But he also prays for justice, for the truth to be revealed, for someone to see what's happening behind these closed doors. He thinks of Rosa, of how she always said God's timing wasn't human timing, that patience was a virtue that would be rewarded. The door to Camilla's study slams open suddenly, the sound echoing through the apartment like a gunshot. Her voice carries down the hallway, loud enough that she's not even trying to hide it anymore. Tomorrow, I'm getting him out of here, even if I have to drag him out myself. The words hang in the air, a threat that doesn't bother with subtlety, a promise that sounds more like a warning. Don Esteban's hands shake as he clutches the rosary. Something dark is rising to the surface, something that's been building beneath the daily humiliations and casual cruelties. He can feel it pressing against the walls of this expensive prison, demanding to be acknowledged. The truth, he realizes, has been here all along, waiting. Now it's almost ready to emerge, to break through the silence and the fear and the carefully maintained pretense. His knuckles are bandaged now, wrapped in gauze that Yolanda left on the bathroom counter without a word. The white fabric is already stained with dried blood, brown and rust-colored at the edges. He stares at his hands, these tools that built buildings and fed his son and held his dying wife. They're trembling, but beneath the tremor, beneath the fear and the exhaustion, something else stirs. A quiet determination, a refusal to disappear completely, a stubbornness that comes from surviving earthquakes and loss and decades of hard labor. Tomorrow, something will break. He doesn't know what or how, but he can feel it coming, the way you can feel rain before it falls, the way you can sense a storm building on the horizon. Tomorrow, the truth will demand its due. The next afternoon, Mauricio returns from a meeting in Polanco earlier than expected. His driver drops him at the building entrance, and he rides the elevator up alone, loosening his tie as the floors tick by. He's thinking about contracts and permits, about the tower going up near Chapultepec. His mind is full of numbers and deadlines and the 100 small decisions that come with running a construction empire. The elevator doors slide open on his floor. Immediately he hears her voice, Camilla's voice, sharp and impatient, rising from somewhere near the entrance. "Move, old man! Don't make me waste my time!" The words cut through the quiet hallway like a blade. Then comes another sound, something being dragged across the marble floor, a scraping that makes him wince. His father's voice follows, barely audible, a whisper more than words. "Don't drag me like this." The phrase is simple, broken, saturated with hurt. It stops Mauricio in his tracks. For a fraction of a second, he stands frozen as if all the years of his life have concentrated in his chest, pressing down, making it hard to breathe. Then he runs. He rounds the corner, and the scene assembles itself in fragments. A plate on the floor, soup spreading across the white marble in a dark pool, his father on his hands and knees, trying to push himself up, his movements clumsy and pained. Camilla standing over him, her face twisted with annoyance, her designer shoes just inches from the spilled food. When she sees Mauricio, her expression shifts instantly into something that resembles concern. "He fell," she says quickly, reaching down as if to help. "I was trying to assist him." Her voice carries just the right amount of worry, practiced and smooth. But her eyes tell a different story. They're cold, calculating, already working through explanations and excuses. "Papa, don't move." Mauricio kneels beside his father, careful not to step in the soup. He places a hand on the old man's shoulder, feeling how thin he's become, how the bones press through his sweater like branches under cloth. "Let me help you up." Don Esteban looks at him, and in that look, Mauricio sees something that makes his stomach drop. Fear, yes, but also relief, as if rescue has finally arrived after a long siege. Yolanda appears in the kitchen doorway. She holds a dishcloth in both hands, wringing it nervously. Her eyes dart between Camilla and Mauricio, her lips pressed into a thin line. Behind her, through the open service entrance, Mauricio catches a glimpse of Doña Remedios from downstairs, drawn by the commotion. Sophia, the girl who sometimes visits with her grandmother, peers around the older woman's shoulder, her young face serious and watchful. Mauricio helps his father to his feet, steadying him with both hands. That's when he sees them. The bandages on his father's hands, once white but now stained with dried blood that seeped through the gauze in rust-colored patches. The fabric is dirty, clearly not changed in days. Mauricio's jaw tightens. He guides his father to a chair and carefully unwraps one of the bandages. The skin underneath is raw, split across the knuckles in angry red lines. Some of the cuts are beginning to heal, but others look fresh, reopened by continued work. The smell hits him next, the sharp chemical odor of industrial cleaner still clinging to his father's skin. He looks around the apartment as if seeing it for the first time, the thin blanket draped over the back of a chair, the faucet in the kitchen still dripping, that constant sound he's heard for weeks without really noticing. His father's belt, cinched tight but still loose around a waist that's lost too much weight. The pieces fall into place with painful clarity, each detail clicking together to form a picture that makes his chest ache. "Papa," he says quietly, "sit here. Don't get up." He turns to Camilla, who stands near the doorway now, her arms crossed defensively. "What happened to his hands?" "He insisted on cleaning the patio," she says, her tone reasonable, almost bored. "I told him to be careful with the cleaner, but he didn't listen." "Is that true, Papa?" Mauricio asks, without taking his eyes off Camilla. Don Esteban opens his mouth, closes it again. Decades of keeping quiet, of not making trouble, of being grateful for what little he has. All of it holds his tongue. But then, Yolanda steps forward from the kitchen. Her hands are still twisting the dishcloth, but her voice, when she speaks, is steady. "Senor Mauricio," she begins, and everyone in the hallway turns to look at her. She swallows hard, clearly terrified, but continues. "Your wife has been threatening to send him to a nursing home. She gives him spoiled food, old bread, soup that's gone bad. I've wanted to say something for weeks, but I was afraid of losing my job." The words tumble out now, gathering momentum. "I've seen her make him work until his hands bleed. I've heard her say terrible things when you're not here." The silence that follows feels absolute. Even the traffic noise from outside seems to fade. Mauricio looks at Yolanda, then at his father, whose eyes are fixed on his bandaged hands. Camilla lets out a sharp laugh, brittle and defensive. "This is ridiculous. She's lying. Your father is getting old and confused, and she's taking advantage." "Enough!" Mauricio's voice isn't loud, but it cuts through her. Protest like a knife. He pulls out his phone and makes a call, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. "Herrera, it's Mauricio. I need you at the apartment, now. Yes, it's urgent. Bring the documents we discussed last month, property titles, bank statements, everything." He pauses, listening. "And call my accountant. Tell him to come too." He hangs up and makes another call. "Julio, it's Senor Reyes. I need you to come up to the penthouse as a witness to a conversation we're about to have." Another pause. "Yes, now please." Camila's confident expression begins to crack. "What are you doing? You can't just—" "I can," Mauricio says flatly. He walks to the elevator and presses the button. When the doors open, he examines the camera mounted in the corner. This building has security footage, doesn't it? From all the cameras in the halls and the elevator. The doorman, Julio, arrives within minutes, followed shortly by Doña Remedios, who apparently has no intention of leaving now that things are coming to a head. The apartment, usually so quiet and controlled, suddenly feels full of witnesses, of people who've seen things and kept quiet but are now being given permission to speak. Mauricio kneels in front of his father again, this time at eye level. "Papa, I need you to tell me the truth, everything, no matter how hard it is to say." His voice cracks slightly on the last words. "Please." Don Esteban looks at his son, at the boy he raised, now a man kneeling before him with tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. He thinks of Rosa, of her rosary in his pocket, of all the prayers he's whispered asking for. This moment, the truth finally has its opening, and he takes it. Don Esteban speaks slowly at first, his voice rough from disuse, from weeks of swallowing words instead of speaking them. He tells Mauricio about the cold water and the harsh chemicals, about scrubbing until his hands bled. He describes the sour soup and the hard bread, the thin blanket that couldn't keep out the cold at night. He mentions the conversations he overheard, the threats about nursing homes, the way Camila looked at him like he was nothing more than an inconvenience to be managed. Yolanda adds details Don Esteban is too ashamed to mention, the food thrown away while he went hungry, the way Camila would raise her voice when he moved too slowly, the names she called him when no one else was around. Doña Remedios nods along, confirming that she heard shouting through the walls on more than one occasion. Sofia, young as she is, speaks up too, describing how Don Esteban always looked sad when she saw him in the hallway, how he seemed to shrink into himself when Camila appeared. By the time his father finishes speaking, Mauricio's hands are clenched into fists at his sides. His jaw works silently, grinding teeth together as if physically holding back words that want to explode. The lawyer, Herrera, arrives during the testimony. He's a serious man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes that miss nothing. He listens without interrupting, taking notes on a tablet, nodding occasionally. When everyone has spoken, Mauricio stands and walks to the window. The afternoon sun slants through the glass, illuminating the dust particles that drift in the air. He can see the soup stain on the marble, the abandoned plate, all the small evidences of cruelty that he somehow missed while focusing on his business, his contracts, his towers of steel and glass. How did he not see this? How did he not notice his own father disappearing in front of him? "Show me the security footage," he says to Julio. The doorman pulls out his phone and navigates to the building's security app. He swipes through several recordings until he finds what he's looking for. The video is grainy, but clear enough. It shows Camila in the hallway 3 days ago, gripping Don Esteban's arm and pulling him roughly toward the kitchen. The audio is faint, but they can hear her voice, sharp and cutting. "Hurry up, old man. You're useless." Mauricio watches the video twice, his face growing harder with each viewing. Then he turns to Herrera. "What are my options?" The lawyer doesn't hesitate. "Given the evidence of elder abuse, you can file for immediate separation of assets, freeze joint accounts pending an audit, and pursue both civil and criminal charges. You can also obtain a restraining order, preventing her from contacting your father." He glances at Camila, who has gone pale. The penalties for elder abuse in Mexico City are substantial, especially when there's clear documentation. "Do it," Mauricio says. "All of it." Camila finally finds her voice, but it comes out too high, too desperate. "You can't be serious. This is our home. Everything we've built together." "Everything I built," Mauricio corrects her. "The house is in my name. The accounts are from my company. And you signed a prenuptial agreement, remember?" He nods to Herrera, who produces a folder and slides it across the table. "My lawyer advised it when we got married. You weren't happy about it then. I imagine you're even less happy now." Camilla's hands shake as she opens the folder. Her eyes scan the pages, her face losing color with each paragraph. "This can't be legal. You can't just throw me out." "I can, actually," Herrera interjects calmly. "The prenuptial agreement is ironclad. Moreover, given the documented abuse, Señor Reyes has every legal right to revoke your access to the property immediately. You have until this evening to collect your personal belongings. Anything purchased with Señor Reyes's money stays here." "This is insane." Camilla's voice rises, taking on a hysterical edge. I took care of him. I fed him, gave him a place to live. You tortured him, Mauricio says quietly, and the words hang in the air like an indictment. You made my father, the man who sacrificed everything so I could have a future, scrub floors until his hands bled. You fed him spoiled food. You threatened to throw him into a nursing home. You made him feel worthless in his own son's house. His voice breaks on the last word, and he has to pause to collect himself. I will never forgive myself for not seeing it sooner, but I see it now, and you're done. Camilla tries several more times to argue, to justify, to deflect blame. She cries, though the tears seem calculated, produced on demand. She accuses Yolanda of lying, claims Don Esteban is confused, suggests that Mauricio is overreacting. But each excuse falls flat against the weight of evidence. The videos, the witnesses, the physical condition of Don Esteban himself. Herrera makes several calls, his voice professional and detached, as he sets legal mechanisms into motion. Bank accounts are frozen pending investigation. Keys and credit cards are collected. A formal complaint is filed with the authorities for elder abuse. The process is swift, efficient, and completely devoid of emotion on the lawyer's part. This is simply justice being administered, consequences following actions as inevitably as thunder follows lightning. By the time the sun begins to set, painting the windows on orange and gold, Camilla is packing a suitcase in the bedroom. Julio stands in the doorway, present but not interfering, ensuring she takes only what belongs to her. The sounds of drawers opening and closing echo through the apartment. Hangers scrape across rods. Zippers rasp shut. When she emerges, suitcase in hand, her makeup is smudged and her hair has lost its perfect styling. She looks smaller somehow, diminished. She tries one last time to catch Mauricio's eye, to find some crack in his resolve, but he simply nods to Julio, who escorts her to the elevator. The doors close on her face, still trying to speak, still trying to explain. The apartment exhales. It's a physical sensation, as if the walls themselves have been holding their breath and can finally release. Yolanda lets out a long sigh and crosses herself. Doña Remedios does the same, murmuring a quiet prayer. Sofia squeezes her grandmother's hand. Don Esteban sits in his chair by the window, his bandaged hands resting in his lap. He looks out at the city, at the buildings he helped construct, at the streets he once walked selling tamales from a wooden cart. The windows no longer feel cold. The apartment no longer feels like a prison. For the first time in months, he allows himself to breathe fully, deeply, without fear. Mauricio crosses to him and kneels, placing a thick, soft blanket over his father's legs. I'm so sorry, Papa, he whispers. I should have seen. I should have known. Don Esteban reaches out with his damaged hands and cups his son's face. You saw when it mattered, he says gently. You saw and you acted. That's what counts. The microwave beeps in the kitchen, but this time it's warming fresh coffee, real food, a meal prepared with care. The apartment fills with a new kind of quiet. Not the silence of fear and oppression, but the peace of justice restored. Dignity, long suppressed, rises again and takes its rightful place at the head of the table. The days that follow bring consequences that ripple outward from the penthouse like stones dropped in still water. Herrera files the formal complaint with the authorities, and the legal system, often slow and indifferent, responds with surprising speed. Perhaps it's the clear documentation, the video evidence, the testimony of multiple witnesses. Perhaps it's simply that the case is so straightforward that there's no room for ambiguity. Elder abuse, when proven beyond doubt, carries weight that even the most cynical judges cannot ignore. A hearing is scheduled within the week. Camilla appears with her own lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit who tries to paint her as a victim of misunderstanding. A devoted wife overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for an aging father-in-law. But the evidence speaks louder than his polished arguments. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who has seen too many cases of family cruelty, examines the photographs of Don Esteban's hands, reviews the security footage, and listens to the recorded statements from Yolanda and the neighbors. Her verdict is swift and uncompromising. Camilla is ordered to stay at least 100 meters away from Don Esteban at all times. She receives a substantial fine, the amount determined by her access to Mauricio's wealth and her complete lack of remorse. But the judge goes further, imposing a sentence that makes Camila's face go white. Mandatory community service at Casa Esperanza, a shelter for elderly people who have been abandoned or mistreated by their families? You will serve 200 hours, the judge says, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. You will clean, you will cook, you will listen to the stories of people you treated as less than human, and you will learn, if you're capable of learning, what dignity means. There's more. The judge orders Camila to make a public apology at San Agustin Parish, the church where she attended Mass every Sunday, where she was seen by the entire neighborhood dressed in her designer clothes and expensive jewelry, presenting an image of piety and grace. The irony isn't lost on anyone. The woman who performed virtue in public while practicing cruelty in private will now have to stand before that same community and confess her sins. The Sunday of the apology, the church is packed. Word has spread through the neighborhood the way news always does in close communities, through whispered conversations at the market, through phone calls between friends, through the invisible network that connects people who live in proximity and share their lives. Everyone knows someone who knows someone. Everyone has heard fragments of the story. Now they've come to witness the conclusion. Camila stands at the front of the church, near the altar, where she once received communion with her head bowed in false humility. She wears simple clothes now, no designer labels, no jewelry except for a plain watch. Her hair is pulled back without the benefit of professional styling. She looks ordinary, stripped of the armor of wealth and status that once shielded her from judgment. Father Miguel, the elderly priest who has served this parish for 30 years, stands beside her. His face is kind but firm as he instructs her to face the congregation and speak. Camila's voice shakes as she reads from a prepared statement, her lawyer's careful language attempting to minimize while still acknowledging. But Father Miguel stops her. In your own words, he says gently but insistently. The truth, daughter, not a lawyer's version of it. She stumbles through it then, the real confession. How she saw Don Esteban as a burden, how she resented his presence in her home, his neediness, his age, his poverty, how she made him work until his hands bled because it made her feel powerful to control someone so completely. The congregation listens in silence, their faces a mixture of shock, disgust, and something that might be pity, not for her, but for the old man who suffered under her roof. When she finishes, no one applauds. There's no absolution offered, no immediate forgiveness. Father Miguel simply nods and dismisses her. Justice, he reminds the congregation, is not just about punishment, but about restoration and learning. Whether Camila will learn remains to be seen. But the community has witnessed her humiliation, and that witnessing matters. It sends a message that abuse, even behind expensive doors and marble floors, will not be tolerated or ignored. Don Esteban doesn't attend the apology. He has no interest in watching Camila perform contrition. Instead, he spends that Sunday morning in the apartment with Mauricio, sharing pan dulce and coffee at the kitchen table. The same table where he once scrubbed dishes with bleeding hands now holds a simple breakfast. 2 cups, 2 plates, 2 people rebuilding something that was nearly destroyed. The penthouse has been transformed in small but significant ways. A doctor specializes in geriatric care has examined Don Esteban's hands and prescribed ointment to help them heal. The kitchen is stocked with fresh vegetables, good bread, meat from the butcher at the corner market. A comfortable chair now sits by the window, with thick cushions and a reading lamp. Mauricio brought his father's old photo albums from storage, the ones Rosa kept, filled with pictures from Atlixco and the early years in Mexico City. Sofia visits more often now, bringing her homework to do at the kitchen table, while Don Esteban tells her stories about building the city, about the earthquake, about the wooden cart and the steam rising from tamales in the early morning. She listens with wide eyes, asking questions, laughing at his jokes, treating him like the treasure he is, a living connection to history, a keeper of stories that might otherwise be lost. Yolanda still comes twice a week to clean, but now she's paid fairly and treated with respect. She and Don Esteban have become something like friends, trading recipes and complaining about telenovelas they both watch. The apartment no longer feels like a stage set for cruelty, but like a home where people live and talk and share meals. One evening, as the sun sets over the city and paints everything gold, Mauricio sits beside his father on the sofa. He takes the old man's hands carefully, mindful of the healing cuts, and holds them gently. "Forgive me for not seeing sooner," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "Forgive me for being so blind." Don Esteban squeezes his son's hands in return. "You saw when your heart was ready to see," he says. "You saw, and you acted with courage and justice. That's all that matters now." He pauses, looking out at the city he helped build, brick by brick, tamale by tamale, day by day. "Your mother would be proud of you. I'm proud of you." They embrace then, father and son, holding each other the way they should have been holding each other all along. Outside, the city continues its endless movement, indifferent to small dramas playing out in penthouses and apartments and houses across its vast sprawl. But inside this home, peace has made its nest. Respect has taken its rightful place. Dignity, long suppressed, now sits at the head of the table where it belongs. The rosary rests on the side table, not as a desperate lifeline, but as a reminder of faith rewarded. The photograph of young Mauricio remains in Don Esteban's pocket, but now it's joined by a new picture, one taken last week of father and son together, both smiling, both whole. The lesson has been learned and will not be forgotten. True wealth isn't measured in marble floors or penthouses or towers of glass. It's measured in how we treat those who raised us, who sacrificed for us, who deserve our care in return. Respect is the inheritance that never runs out.